Thank you for joining us today for Table Talk. I'm your host, Stan Deatherage. My co-host and the greater host today will be Down East Dave Hudson. Down East Dave, you have some things to ask me, and you think as a county commissioner I might be able to provide some insight.
I do, yes. I've got some questions that have come up about some events that have been taking place here in the county, specifically around how monies are spent, around how those are allocated, and how those potentially impact our local schools.
Well, since the county spends most of its treasure on the school system by a large measure, ask away.
Sure. We'll start with one, hopefully this fairly easy one. Can you confirm that the county commissioners have already provided the school board with approximately $10.5 million of our county taxpayer money this year to build the superintendent's pet project, that mega school where Eastern currently sits?
Eastern Elementary, built in the same location at the lowest point of the lot at $383 per square foot, right?
Correct.
Yes. So far, it's $10,250,000 with another $250,000 that the schools are allocating. But of course, that money comes from the taxpayers. So it will wash through in a matter of months, and it will be exactly $10,500,000 probably by the end of the year.
Okay. So speaking to that, I'll give you some additional information. You're probably more than aware of it, but over the past 6-year period, beginning with school year 2020-2021, Beaufort County Schools requested $82 million in local expenses, and they received roughly $75.5 million according to the school district. That doesn't include monies from the state and federal levels or the approximately $42 million in lottery funds for the new mega school. Last week, the last week's school board meeting, Dr. Cheeseman did say a challenge for Beaufort County Schools is paying for the positions they lost. That would be teachers, principals, folks like that, when the deficit between what the school district needs in funding versus what the county commissioners allot is approximately $6.5 million in local expenses over the course of those past 6 years. My question would be, if this was not managed a little bit more properly by the school system, the administrators there at the county level, that money would have been available based off of the local expenditures or the local allotments, in addition to what they were getting from the state and federal level. And what would you believe as far as that is concerned, in your opinion? Is that money being properly spent or planned for, as far as the way we've been seeing it spent recently?
Hard to say. I don't really know how well the school system spends their money, your money, taxpayers' money. I do know they ask for a lot of it. I do know that in the past, we had a superintendent who told us, I will use whatever money you give us, and I will not complain at the end of the year. We'll just make it work. And Beaufort County has historically always given a tremendous amount of money per student to its public schools. I think we're mid-range to higher range, and that's pretty good for a rural county. I think we do quite well. I hope the school system's spending the money properly, but to argue that they're $6.5 million shy, that's a little disconcerting for me. I can tell you this, I will not vote for them to get another $6.5 million at the end of the year or to supplement what they may or may not have spent well. I do know some things they do, I do question. I question the school that they're building now, and I question all the advertisement they've done, and I don't think they've done a very good job with it either. They're losing students.
They are, and that seems to be an issue that I've seen as well, is the messaging coming out of Beaufort County Schools. We've spoken to some of these issues in previous podcasts about Doge, how Doge can be implemented here at Beaufort County level, weeding out, fraud, waste, abuse. I would always add to that incompetence as well. But it is concerning to me. I'm sure it's concerning to all of our other taxpayers and parents of how these monies are being spent, because I know we're having to do fundraiser after fundraiser as well to raise money for basic things in the school. Just, another question is, if the school board did need money to pay for, say, an additional principal or other required teachers to prevent closing a school, they certainly could do so with the money that came out of their, the funding that is allotted to them from the county commissioners. Isn't that correct?
I will always argue Beaufort County schools are well funded. They're all awash in money. They've been awash in money for a long time. And I can tell by the way they spend a lot of money on things that I probably wouldn't spend money on. I believe that government, and schools no different than government, money should be spent on all essential projects, but it should be spent wisely and well. I'd harken back to what I've mentioned before as to how they manage the charter school here. And sometimes they go without all of what they need, but they tend to manage anyway, and they are funded at a much lower level than the Beaufort County schools are at the public level.
Thank you. I don't want to put any words in your mouth, but again, the perception would be, in my opinion, if we had not already spent $10.5 million of your taxpayer money this year on this new mega school, that money could have been available to potentially invest into the Snowden School, whether it's personnel, whether it's fixing issues with the building, whether it's looking for additional opportunities if we needed to consolidate schools within the county. Would it not make more sense to try and consolidate schools on the south side of the river, Chocowinity and Snowden, in a more centralized location south of the river, as opposed to consolidating schools in Washington itself in a school that we didn't need?
Well, I will argue that none of these problems were brought to the county commissioners. In fact, the building of this school that you say they do not need, and I will argue you're probably right, wasn't brought to the county commissioners until the very late stages of you just vote yes. And of course, two of us voted no. First of all, we didn't have enough information. Secondly, and more importantly, I don't think we would have got enough information to make that school worthy. Not at $383 per square foot. And now we're seeing, and I argued this point a year and a half ago. Now we are seeing the cost of building schools go down. We are seeing the fact that they're building at the lowest point of the lot. We're seeing the fact they're going to have to tear down two perfectly good schools. They could be retrofitted, upfitted, to become more of a community school-based plan. And I would also argue that you had $42 million sitting out there. Granted, you would have to have a match, and that match would have been roughly around $10 million. And they said that money had to be built for one school. They say a lot of things in government. And a lot of changes are made. A lot of things can be done differently. They said was the bureaucracy of DPI, Department of Public Instruction. And I don't trust everything I hear, whether it's under a Democrat administration or a Republican administration. A lot of times they just want to get things done. Maybe it's a box checked on their resume. I don't know. But for the politicians, for the bureaucracy. But I do think this was a wrong time to build a mega school in Beaufort County with a decreasing student population when we had two perfectly well-functioning schools. They tried to skill their parents and said these schools are not maintained properly for your child's safety. And I don't like that. I wish they wouldn't do that. I wish they'd stop doing that.
That would make sense to me. When we talk about this in schools and why it's important and why we're closing a school or keeping a school open and how our taxpayer dollars are spent, I think is important. And I think a lot of questions have come up around that. We've touched on the most recent tax reval and the large amount of money that's currently still sitting in the fund balance. Some people might argue that if we have $26 million, give or take, that's not currently allocated, that's considerably higher than the 8 or 10% of annual funding required by statute to be maintained by the county. If people are saying we didn't have enough money, the county's awash in money, the schools are awash in money, and yet it's being spent poorly due to mismanagement, incompetence, or just a lack of general understanding of what should be done in the first place.
Absolutely. And And the argument is, well, the county had the money. Why didn't the county spend it on the schools? Well, I would argue if that was my decision to make, what to do with the money, I'd give it back to the taxpayers. It's better spent in their pockets.
Absolutely.
And I think when you give governing entities too much money and tell them go do the best you can with it, and most times they don't because they are bureaucrats, and some bureaucrats are far better than others. I think I've learned that over all these many decades I've served as a Beaufort County Commissioner. I will argue if you give them too much money, they will find a way to muck up the process. And then corruption may or may not set in, and that concerns me greatly. That's why I'm a big advocate of Doge.
Absolutely. That concerns me as well, just even from the very beginning of what we saw with how this school even came into being. It was money, again, that was offered to Beaufort County Schools by an outgoing head of DPI who didn't even make it through the primary, but used the incentive or the carrot of offering money to rural counties in a bid for reelection. Potentially some backdoor meetings between certain county commissioners, certain state legislators.
I was not one of those county commissioners, by the way. I was kept in the dark. I usually am. When it comes to money, and with my attitude that I should give that money back to the taxpayers, I am left in the dark on a regular basis.
And that's how it seems to be, that even the school board as a whole doesn't operate as a whole. The county commissioners don't operate as a whole. And a lot of things are slipping through the cracks because not everybody's informed. And certainly, most importantly, you, the taxpayers, aren't being informed. And if you don't know what's going on, if the folks that you have elected to represent you are being left out of the process, or if they're misinformed or given bad information in attempts to push a certain agenda through, that's dangerous for everyone involved.
Yeah, and I'd like to also state this. It's not because we're not doing what it takes to be connected. Maybe we should, maybe snuggle up to some corrupt county commissioner and do his bidding so he'll involve us in the next meeting so we can be in the room when it happens. Having said that, that's not the way it works. There are laws prohibiting
That's right.
backroom deals. Government should be done as per the Sunshine Law, which stipulates that it should be done in public. You should know what's going to happen. You should be invited to the meeting, and it should be advertised. And I will argue it should be filmed. I've argued that for 2 decades, and because our meetings are filmed now, is greatly because of people like myself and Commissioner Hood Richardson. We took money out of our pockets to film the first meetings, and it took a long time to get those Democrats to film. Democrats, by and large, hate transparency. They hated it 15, 20, 25 years ago. Commissioner Frankie Waters, who was a Democrat, couldn't get elected as a Democrat, decided to run as a Republican, got elected as a Republican, had that R by his name. That actually meant something in Beaufort County, but governs as a Democrat.
Yes.
Hates transparency. I mean, it's endemic within Democrats. They hate transparency.
A lack of transparency helps to prevent true oversight being done by those folks who are elected to provide that oversight. And I think that
Truly.
lack of oversight is what we're seeing now in some of the issues that we see where, there's movement being made to actively close the Snowden school, one that potentially could have been saved through better management, better, resources being allocated certain ways to improve school scores as opposed to blaming the lower scores on the students or the parents. The children are leaving that school district. So the solution that's provided by Beaufort County Schools and the school board and superintendent is we'll just bus those children the extra 35, 45 miles to attend school in Chocowinity. And they don't look at the repercussions of how that impacts the ability of those students to not have as long of a day by being on a bus ride. It impacts their ability to participate in after-school activities or sports. Just a myriad of issues that go on with that. Of course, we also look at school performance. Chocowinity is one of the higher ranking schools in the county. But when we mix those two schools together, there's going to be there's going to be an issue there where, some students are going to come in who are brilliant. We're going to have other students who come in, but we're going to have to look at overall how the teacher ratio is, the student teacher ratio, a lot of things that just have been missed that probably could have been caught sooner had proper planning been done. And maybe we took that money and allocated that better, whether it was back into additional teachers, additional programs, or a facility that we actually needed maybe south of the river, as opposed to one, like you said, that's north of the river that's, costing almost $370 per square foot.
383. Yeah, and see, that's the problem. I think if we had done a better job through our representative in Raleigh and our senator, and we were in between senators right then, by the way, but if we could have gotten a better performance level rather than get the money available now for the one singular school, we could have gotten money allocated over a period of time for our gross needs across the entire school system. I think we'd all been better served. Buildings already built at the highest point of the lot. Usually that's where most of our schools reside, not at the lowest point, but at the highest point of the lot. Already built, and then upfit, retrofit, do whatever it takes to make these school buildings across the county work better. Understanding that community schools are best. Remember what happened down in Belhaven when they closed Wilkinson?
Wilkinson was closed. Pantego was closed.
Pantego was closed. And the downtowns of these areas suffer mightily when they create these mega schools and they start busing, which again is another added expense. Running a bus up and down the road takes time, takes people away from what they should be doing, which is enjoying life, and all for the sake of busing.
Yes.
I don't understand it. There's a lot of things I don't understand, but I'm only one man. I can only be a county commissioner. I can't be on the school board as well. But you could have been, and hopefully you will be again one day, because you take a great and profound interest in how our children can be better served. And if our children are better served, our society is better served. And Lord knows if our society is better served, the parents of those children will be better served.
Absolutely. You couldn't have said it better. When we have those schools closer to home, closer to where those children reside, closer to their family, we get more family involvement. We get better economic development. There's a school there. We can bring in outside industry. We have an educated workforce. Mm-hmm. There's so many benefits to having that local school bring to the local area. And even though Beaufort County may not be a huge county geographically or in population compared to some
well,
of the others,
actually, it is a huge county geographically. We're a big county.
It's a big county.
We're counting the water. I think we're the largest.
We may be. I may have misspoken there. But when we look at how we relate all of that to the funding and how it's spent, yes. I think as big as we are, even if it's not population based, those community schools are just as important and maybe even more important as large as we may be as a county. So I appreciate all of your insight.
Well, I appreciate it. Any more questions?
No, I think you pretty much wrapped it up. I just wanted to provide a little bit of information to folks about what's happening in the schools, the way the money's appropriated, and just really be able to shed a little bit more light on areas where we may need some more common sense as you look at those different folks who are giving us this information. Attend a meeting, look and see what's going on. And if you have issues with any of it, speak out, public comment. It's welcome at County Commission and at the school board. I encourage you to voice your opinions.
Yes, please. I concur with everything my good friend Down East Dave says. It's important that you get involved. Please come to the county commissioner meetings, go to school board meetings, speak, ask to be heard. I mean, it's your government. You vote for these people. If they're not doing the right job, you need to know they're not doing the right job. And listen, a lot of times, particularly at school board meetings, a lot of the crowd is orchestrated.
It is. And
I don't see that at county commissioner meetings. I used to. And in fact, when I saw that at county commissioner meeting, it was usually school activities. So the schools are very good at orchestrating a mob of people. And just because you see them moving in a certain direction, don't think that's the only direction. There's lots of directions to go. And generally, the best direction is the one that benefits everyone, especially you, the taxpayers, because I will promise you sometimes that well will run dry. And I don't want to see that in Beaufort County. I hate that. And I appreciate you bringing this today. This is what we want to do, is provide a local service to people to help them become more and better informed. We do this here at Table Talk. And Down East Dave, you did a wonderful job.
Appreciate it. No.
Took over as the host.
I appreciate the time and the answers.
I was interviewed.
Oh, yes.
I was glad to do it.
And if they have questions for us, they can always reach out to us as well.
Yes. at our emails.
Yes, we'd love to hear from you.
Thank you, and see you next week in a brand new show.